a pendulum, a cootie catcher, and a deck of tarot cards. What do all of these have in common? They are psychic tools. And the real question is do these psychic tools work? Are they good for divination? Short answer, yes, but long answer, also no. So we're going to talk about psychic tools in this video and how you can work with them and how to work with them correctly. So welcome. If you are new here, my name is Lauren. I am a psychic coach, and on my channel, I love to teach people about how to use their psychic abilities, and that also includes going over all of the divination tools that are out there. Now, if you're longtime watchers, you already know that my preference is to understand your psychic abilities first. But a lot of people come into this already knowing some of these tools, already having used them for a while. So the question is what tools work? What tools don't? And really the answer to that is that anything can be a tool for your psychic ability. This is why we see people who can find messages in numbers, messages in clouds, or from a song that they hear in the car or a leaf that they see in the park. It seems like there's some people out there that just can see messages in anything and can use any tool that they come across. And really when it comes down to it, it's all about belief and intention with tools. And this is why you can even use like cootie catchers or an 8-ball or like a card game like Cards Against Humanity and use it as a divination tool. It really comes down to your belief. Do you believe that it's going to work? If you don't believe it's going to work, yeah, none of those tools are going to work for you. But if you truly believe that you can use it for psychic information, I think anything can be a tool. So when you tell the universe, I believe that this is going to work, I believe I can receive messages through it, then you're telling the universe, hey, send me more of that. But if you're out there saying, no, you can't see signs, that doesn't exist, then the universe is not going to keep sending you those messages because you're not paying attention, you're not looking at them, you're not seeing the message anyway, so why bother? So because of that theory, I think that a lot of these tools can work, and they do work for people because they believe that they do. And I think this is why all of these tools have become so popular. The pendulum, the tarot cards, runes, astrodice. I think that a lot of people gravitate towards them because they believe it works, and it kind of does to some extent for them. And I often think that this is where people get started on their psychic development journeys. They find these tools, they're interested, they can learn them really quick. However, I want to talk about how these tools maybe don't work the best for us. Because just like any tool, they can be used incorrectly, right? So really, I want to talk about just some things to like be aware of as you are exploring these different psychic tools, and then we're going to get into how to use them correctly. But overall, with psychic tools, there can be some downsides to them. And the main reason for this is that we can often start relying on these tools too much to where they become a crutch. And when they become a crutch, what happens is we stop trusting our own intuition over that tool. Or maybe we didn't trust that our intuition ahead of that tool to begin with. And so my personal belief is that we can always access our intuition, our psychic ability, using no tools at all. You know, it's up here in our mind. We use the psychic clairs. We can receive an answer to anything using those clairs. And you shouldn't need any psychic tools. And so often I see people getting a little too reliant on those tools. And what happens is you become dependent on them and you can't pick up psychic information without them. And like the idea of trying to do a reading or picking up information without that tarot deck or without that pendulum can become really like scary and overwhelming. And don't get me wrong, I think tools can be fun. I've obviously covered them all in my videos. And I use them myself. Again, I think the cautionary tale is to just make sure that you don't use them so much that they become a crutch to your psychic abilities. I mean, tools are just that. They're tools. They are assisting you until you no longer need them. Now, I know there's going to be a ton of comments on this video probably saying, well, I don't want to learn how to do that. I don't need to. I just want to use the pendulum forever and ever. And that's totally fine. I'm not forcing anyone to do that. Now, who this might not be for are the people who don't want to use their intuition, and that's totally fine too. There's no pressure to do it this way. I think there are a ton of people out there who just want to be tarot readers, for example, and they want to read the tarot very logically. Like it comes from a place of memorization, of analyzing, of combining the cards. It's very like left brain. You're just looking at the cards, you're not using your intuition or anything else. And I think that's a totally fine way to read. However, if you are calling yourself psychic, if you're calling yourself intuitive, I think the implication there is, oh, I'm also using my psychic abilities or I'm using my intuitive abilities. So if that's the case, then yeah, you probably want to mix in an intuitive reading there by making sure as you're using the tool, you're also consulting whoever it is you're talking to make sure that you are getting psychic hits outside of those tools. But again, I know that there are some people who just want to read the cards, read the pendulum as is, not involve their psychic ability. And I think you just have to be clear about that up front and just say, hey, I just read these very like analytically, I have them memorized, you know, however you want to say it. Again, that's totally your choice, but if you are coming from a place of wanting to develop those psychic abilities, read other people, you're calling yourself a psychic or intuitive, it's probably best to keep these in mind because that's probably what others are expecting out of a reading, and it's just good practice as a good psychic that is ethical. Now, if you are completely new to the psychic ability, obviously, you know, you probably don't know about the clairs, and that's totally fine too. I think that a lot of people get into these tools first. I certainly did before I ever learned about this. And so again, it's just something to keep in the back of your mind as you learn, as you grow, of like, oh yeah, maybe I'm relying on this a little too much. Maybe I should go back to my clairs, to my own intuition, and try to remember what it's like to receive without using XYZ. And that first step with psychic development is just learning about your clairs, learning about how information can come into you, how you can receive that psychic hit, how to remove blocks to your psychic ability. All of that is kind of like the basic info for when you're starting out and you want to have those psychic hits come in intuitively, not through tools. So if you haven't been exposed to that, obviously I don't expect you to know all about that, but I do have video courses on that and how to kind of increase your psychic abilities from the ground up, again, not using any sort of tools. And then what you can do later down the line is kind of add those tools into your practice. Now, the next question is, how do you know when it's starting to become a crutch? And again, I sort of mentioned a few of these, but one of the big ones is that when you feel like you can't do a reading without that tool. So for example, I totally got into a habit of relying a little too much on my tarot cards and my oracle cards. And I thought about, oh, I'm doing this too much. Am I using my psychic clairs? Am I using that ability? And when I thought about it, and like when I thought about approaching a reading and setting aside those cards, it gave me a lot of anxiety because I was worried I wouldn't be able to pick up information without those cards. So that's like a good sign that you probably need to take a step back from it. It's not that you just have to like completely like throw it out of your readings, but try to do more readings without them. Like you don't have to completely remove like your tarot cards from your client readings, especially if that's what they expect. But it could just be on the outside on your own time, you're doing a little bit more practicing or readings without those tarot cards or something. Again, I'm not like singling out tarot readers for any reason. I think, again, you can completely decide I want to read tarot and I don't want to use my intuition and this is just the way I'm going to do it. It's just a really good example because we see it very often. Another way that you might know that it's becoming a crutch or you're not using your intuition is when you start looking at the tools at face value, where you are seeing the astro dice or you're seeing the card and you're not getting any additional psychic hits off of it. You're literally just reading the words on it. Like for example, the opposite would be like when you flip over a tarot card, you're drawn to the imagery, the colors, and then you feel a certain way. You're letting those psychic hits come in, feelings, thoughts, visions, symbols, like you're seeing more than just the face value of that tool. Another example, if you're using a pendulum, you ask a question and it says, you know, yes, for example, but then on top of it, you're also hearing yes, because this is the right path or something. I don't know. You know, that's the additional psychic hits that we're looking for, not just reading it off of face value and just giving, yes, that's the only answer I have. Ooh, another good one of like knowing that maybe it's becoming a crutch is when you feel like the tool is starting to contradict itself. Like you're pulling yes, and then you're pulling no, and then you're pulling something different, and the tool's just like legitimately not working for you anymore. I often see this as a sign of your guides being like, this isn't working. Trust, like what you're getting in your head. A perfect example of that actually is when I did my Ouija board video and we were trying to just plainly use the planchette to get an answer, and it stopped working very well. And I truly think it was because at the same time I was hearing, like, you can talk to me in your head. Why are you making me talk through this? And they were like, the spirit was like frustrated. So that same thing can happen where the tool stops like working. And I think it could be, again, that maybe your guides are encouraging you to use your intuitive abilities. It could have other reasons there too of you just not trusting the tool anymore. However, I think if the tool's not working, then obviously, quit using the tool, come back to your psychic clairs and start from there. Another big indicator that I see often with a lot of the coaching clients that I get is that people are just frustrated that they're not getting more information. The tool is just limiting, and that can be just a simple thing that tools have. There's only so many cards in a deck. It can only describe complexity so much. And I think the really good readers will add their own intuitive hits on top of whatever they're receiving from the tool to make it more complex. So if you find you're frustrated with the amount of information coming in, also maybe time to see, hey, is this a crutch? And another sign that those tools might be becoming a crutch is that you might feel like all of the readings kind of feel the same. Like it just feels so similar and you're not really getting anything new or different. If it's psychic, it's going to be new. It's going to be different. It's going to be information outside of you. It's going to be things often you haven't heard of before. There's a gray area there, obviously. I have a whole video on like how to know if it's psychic or your thoughts, but ultimately, if you're getting redundant stuff, you're probably being limited by that tool. And with all of these tips, obviously no one is standing over your shoulder. I'm not standing over your shoulder being like, don't do that. So this is really just something that you have to check yourself on. And it's not something that you have to shame yourself or beat yourself up for. It's just something to keep in mind. And as you notice it start to happen, just kind of float back the opposite direction. Pull back a little bit from that tool. Trust your psychic ability a little bit more. Do some exercises if you need to. Focus on your blocks to maybe understand why something is happening, why you don't feel like you can trust your abilities over that tool. Now, if you're listening and you're like, I don't think this is me, I feel pretty good about it, I feel like I get psychic hits with the tool, I feel like I can read and still put it away, I don't rely on it too much. If you feel semi-confident in your psychic ability, if you feel like you're getting more information from yourself than you are necessarily the tool, if the tool says one thing but your intuition is saying another thing, you trust that intuitive hit more than you do the card, then you probably don't have anything to worry about. You can tell yourself, okay, I'm good, I'm keeping myself in check, this is not becoming a crutch. However, if you're like, oh shoot, maybe I am a little too reliant on something, what can I do? I'm gonna give you some tips here on how to kind of just wean off of it. The first thing, obviously, if you haven't done this, is really truly learn about how the psychic ability works. When you learn how it works, you find more confidence in your own psychic ability. And then again, wean yourself off by just doing it a little bit less. I kind of mentioned it before of like, taking some time outside of like your normal reading to do something else, to put the cards away, to practice exercises. I have like a whole exercise playlist on my channel here of like exercises you can do to strengthen your psychic ability. So you can take some time to do one of those. Again, I think understanding what psychic blocks you have are going to be a huge help here. Because really what's going on is you're not trusting your ability over a tool. And so you have to ask yourself, why do I not trust it? Why is this not working? Why am I telling myself this psychic ability doesn't work? And so that's where we get into removing blocks to your psychic ability. I have a whole video on that. It's such a huge integral part of like my psychic course because everyone comes across blocks. You have blocks to your psychic ability all the time. It's totally normal. You just have to stop and recognize, okay, what self-limiting belief do I've got going on here of, oh, I can't read without the cards. Another thing you can do is just try a different way of reading or just try a different tool. Sometimes if we're kind of pigeonholed into doing a reading a certain way, sometimes just pulling back out and saying, you know what, I'm going to just go do some automatic writing instead. Or, you know what, I'm going to try to read this time using astrodice instead of a pendulum. Just trying to mix it up sometimes can help flex those psychic skills. And just get you out of relying on that tool. Essentially, put it away for a while until you feel comfortable enough that you can integrate it back in and it's not going to be something that you're reliant on too much. And just know too that I have psychic development game nights every month with everyone on my Patreon. All you have to do is pay the entry fee to join and you can practice reading other people for that month. So you can get some outside practice with other students who are not going to judge you if you're getting things off, because we're all learning, we're all practicing. So if you want to learn more about those psychic development practice nights, check out the description down below. I'd love to see you there if you want some practice. Again, this happens to everyone. There's no judgment here. It's something that you just kind of, again, have to keep in the back of your mind, check yourself, understand how your abilities work, and you're going to be okay. There's no shame, no judgment. I think it's just good practice. And truly, I think once you're there, you get into a zone of really using these tools in such a beautiful way. They can add such complexity to your readings. They can be a fun visual for the person that is receiving your reading. They can be really, really awesome tools to kind of just help you trust your intuition more, flex those psychic skills more. And I'm not, again, not harping on tools at all. It's just the overuse of them. And truly, I think they can add such validity to your readings and help you trust your psychic ability even more, that I think they're really beautiful and I love working with them. And so if you want to learn how to use a very specific tool, I've tried to make sure that every tool that I come across, I've done a video on. So I've got Lenormand cards, Astro Dice, I've got runes, I don't have a cootie catcher. Maybe I should do that one. I got pendulums. So I have videos on each of these and how you can use them intuitively. So it's not just how to, basically use a pendulum, but how do you also use it alongside of your clairs. So I have a whole playlist called Psychic Tools as well that you can check out. So if you have any questions about any psychic tools, please leave it in the comments down below. And feel free to give this video a like if you found it helpful. And if you really want to support me moving forward, I would love to have you on Patreon. Patreon is kind of like a membership where people donate a small amount to me every single month. You end up getting extra content out of it, more videos from me, more readings. And it's just a fun little way you can support me and help me keep creating these free videos. So thank you so much, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!